Hi, Elena is here, and today I'm delighted to speak with Eric Michael Gillett, an actor, award-winning vocalist in Manhattan Association of Cabaret and Bistro, and a voice teacher. Eric's film and television appearances include The Producers, Made in Manhattan, multiple episodes in Daredevil, Law and Order, Wu-Tang, FBI, Most Wanted, and more. His Broadway credits include original casts of A Sweet Smell of Success, The Frogs, and Kiss Me Kate Revival, to name a few. Welcome, Eric.
Hello, Elena. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you for spare your time with me today and agreeing to talk to me. So you're currently in film rehearsal schedules for two projects, The Sustain and Woman of the Year. Please tell us more about these projects and how you managed to work on two and more projects at the same time, along with teaching.
Well, The Sustain is what we do in Actors Equity. It's what they call a 29-hour workshop. I've been involved with the piece now for, I would say, about a year, little longer. And we started on Zoom. We did a Zoom reading of it quite some time ago. Then we did a read through of the entire script with the cast gathered together to do so. And then after we finished that, I performed at the company that's developing the piece has a gala every year, and they had me come in and sing the character that I play, sing his big song for the gala, and that went well. So I got a note a few weeks ago saying that they were moving forward to a 29-hour workshop. And they've gathered a cast. There's a few of us who are returning. The young man who plays Ethan, my grandson, is back. The one who plays Betty, my close friend in this place where we're living, she's back. But there are a lot of wonderful new people in it too, including a really terrific Broadway actress by the name of Janine LaManna. She's just one. That's so funny. I just said that wrong. Janine LaManna played a very central role in the last workshop, but she's actually the lead in Woman of the Year, which I'm starting. So there's my confusion. Anyway, they've gathered a really wonderful cast to put this together. It's and it's about older people, mature people who are living in what we call a graduated care assisted living home. So there are some of us who are in our 70s who we don't require any assistance, so we live independently. And then there are others who are a little further down the line, and so they may have a personal aide, or they're moving toward memory wards and things like that. And the relationships between all of them, Harry is he's a very interesting guy because he started dating very late and met his college sweetheart, and that was the only person that he was ever with his entire life. And when she passed away, he's at loose ends. He moves into this place, and he becomes the guy that all the single women want to meet and see. So he's exploring a whole new life there. And I won't go any further into it than that. But the result of this workshop will be, we'll do presentations on the 28th of the month. And after those presentations, the writers will go back in and make changes and tweaks. And then with luck, the company that's developing it will take it to the next step, which might be a full staged reading. The other piece, Woman of the Year, we start rehearsals and open in April. So we're actually starting rehearsals now. And it's a musical. It's based on a film that was a Katharine Hepburn film called Woman of the Year. And it was made into a successful Broadway musical that starred Lauren Bacall. And I play Gerald. Gerald is her long-suffering, acerbic assistant. He's a very funny character. I really enjoy the part. I'm going to have fun working on it. And I will be matched up. I'll be matched up with Janine LaManna. So since I'm her assistant, I'm pretty much attached to her hip through most of the show. How to work on two things at once? It's hard. I'm right now, today as an example, I'm busily spring cleaning, but I'm also running tapes because in addition to doing Woman of the Year and in addition to doing The Sustain, I'm appearing at 54 Below on Sunday night next week at 7 o'clock in Sondheim Unplugged. And this is a series I've been involved with for, 15 years, maybe 17, for a long time. And I'm singing two songs I've never sung before. So this will be an interesting experiment in terror.
Which songs are you going to perform there?
Oh, for Sondheim Unplugged,
Yes.
I'll be singing the solo version of Happiness from the musical Passion, and I'm singing Joanna from Sweeney Todd. Both wonderful songs. I just have never sung them.
How can we get to see the show?
Oh, you can go to the 54 Below website, and or you can check my Facebook page, Eric Michael Gillett, on Facebook, Gillett, because I'll be posting there as well. And essentially, you just go to their website and it takes you to a calendar. You pick the show. They also have a live stream. So if you can't attend in person, you can actually purchase a live stream ticket and the show can come right to your home. It's a wonderful cast of people. Really, really, really terrific people.
Good to know. Good to know. Yes. And also, I'd love to come to support you when you open Woman of the Year, the musical. So
that you can
the
get.
dates posted on your website as well?
That will go on my website, but you can also go to j2spotlightnyc.com. That's their website, and that's where tickets are purchasable. But I'll be posting about it regularly, as will the rest, because I have to tell you, I worked for J2 Spotlight. That was my first stage musical in about 4 years, just as we were coming out of the pandemic. And my first one for them was a class act. And it was a sensational production and a sensational experience for me. And then I continued on with them and did The Baker's Wife, which involved Stephen Schwartz being in the room directly with us. So that was really great. So I have high hopes for Woman of the Year to be as strong a production as those two were.
I saw you in Baker's Wife.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, last year. Amazing.
It was a beautiful show. And so that was a lovely cast as well. But class act is the one that had my heart.
Great. And nice. So I will be posting those links as well at the end of this video, so people can get them right.
I'll send them all to you, so I make sure I got them right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sure. Awesome. Thank you, Eric. This is the most exciting updates about your work. And now let's jump into something very exciting in the past. So the New York Times has called your shows as intimate portrait of man in the thrall of show business dreams, for whom popular standards are platforms for unguarded confessions. What is the story behind this?
That particular review is written by Stephen Holden, and it was for a show that I did. I had several residencies here in the city, most of them at Feinstein's at the Regency, back when it used to be over on Park Avenue. And John Iachetti, who was the booking manager, liked my work, so he booked me in for week-long engagements several times. And this particular review came from a review for a show called Widescreen, which was songs from and about movies. And what he's referring to, though, is that everybody who does cabaret has, a slightly different approach to what they do and how they communicate. And I'm not one of those people that just sort of sings the song gently and quietly and lives there. I dig as deep down and find out as much personal information about myself that applies to the song, and I try to use it. That's been true in my work with Craig Carnelia's material on Cast of Thousands. It's pretty much how I approach all music, is that when the audience finishes seeing a cabaret show, they should leave knowing something more about me than when they came into the room. And so I try really to personalize every single song. I think, the enthrall of show business dreams, well, it's true. I grew up in Culver City, California, not too far from MGM Studios. And, I wanted to sing and act my whole life. So yeah, I always had show business dreams, but I'm able to express them more fully in a cabaret or in a nightclub. I get to tell very personal stories, and every show is unique. The show that I did during the pandemic was called Jump Cut. And it was essentially, it was March and it was winter, and all of a sudden it was the following year and it was spring. And what happened? What was I before and who am I now? And we did that show in an entirely different way. We did that as a virtual show. And there was a place called Metropolitan Zoom who found a way to Zoom performances out, so you actually can have your audience in the studio on the screen with you, which was very exciting. And a perfect chance to just confess all the things that you've been thinking for the last year and a half. That's why I love cabaret. It's very personal, very personal.
And also I want to add to this, Eric, that watching you on stage, watching your performance is so engaging. And, you know, I really mean it, because I'm one of your biggest fans, as well as I'm one of your students. So I know your work, and it's really outstanding always. You really you personalize every song you perform and every role. So it's not enough. I never have enough of you.
Oh, that's so kind
I
of
just
you.
want to add this to this conversation. And you're a showman. You have set up many shows, including one of my favorites, Benjamin House,
Yes.
that is on each December. So I had a blast seeing the last one at the Chelsea Table Plus stage at the Hilton Hotel last December. And Ben, just for our audience, a few words about Benjamin House. Benjamin House is an assisted living residence for mentally challenged people, located in North Carolina, Elizabeth City. Beautiful town, I've been there. And personally, I think it's really nice to make a program for them every year here in New York. And how are you feeling working with Benjamin House program?
Well, first of all, you have to have some background. Some of your people watching this wouldn't know is that for 12 years, I was the ringmaster of Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. So I traveled all over the country. And my first tour, I believe that we were in Raleigh, but Ann Hughes says we were in Norfolk. So one of us has got it right. I just don't know who. I got a note sent backstage. A promoter for the show brought it to me and said that there was a woman who had her son with her, and she wanted to know if I would meet with her son. And she had written a very touching note. She said, you know, that he had suffered seizures as a child, and they had spent years patterning him and getting him, you know, up so that he could function in the real world, even in a limited capacity. But that all he really wanted in the world was to be a ringmaster. And the promoter said, you know, you don't have to see him if you don't want. And I was like, well, of course I want to see him. That's just silly. And so she brought Ben to me. We sat in the empty arena. We talked for a while, and I invited them to come anytime we were in Virginia or North Carolina. And so over the ages, he came. I introduced him to the Clown Alley, and they made him a guest clown. I had him come in as a guest ringmaster so he could blow the whistle that starts the show. And at one point, his mother and I invited them to travel on the train I think we were traveling from Hampton to Richmond. So he actually lived on the train with me for a whole train run. He and his mom did. And we stayed friends. Over the years, they would ask me to come and visit them. And I didn't really feel comfortable traveling away from the show for any extended period of time. But my final year on the road, which was 1998, in my final year on the road, my mother was traveling with me. I'm just adjusting my screen slightly here. My mother was traveling with me, and she wanted to meet them and see their homes. So we drove, and we spent a couple of days with them. And it was on that trip that Ann Hughes told me that she'd had this inspiration. They are a very spiritual, faith-based family. And she said that she felt that she had been given a mission to build a home so that Benjamin would have a permanent residence when she and her husband Lenny were no longer with us, and so that he wouldn't be necessarily a burden to his brother and his sisters. And she did this by sheer dint of will. I mean, she raised the money, she got land grants, she did it all with her husband, but they did it all alone. And I came to visit the house, and Lenny and I were sitting in their den. And I said, you know, I don't know what we could do from my end to raise a lot of money for you, but I wonder if we could raise awareness for Benjamin House so that more people would know that this place exists and what it does, because it does beautiful work. And so that Christmas, we brought our first holiday show down to North Carolina. We performed it at the Art Center of the Albemarle, which eventually we moved to the Museum of the Albemarle. And we did the show every Christmas for a few years. And then I got the idea, well, why don't we do it in New York as well? So we do a version of the show in New York, and then the core perform, because that way I could have a bigger cast. And then the core performers would travel with us down to Benjamin House, and we would do it there. And then the pandemic hit. So it turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because we did it virtually, and that meant I have fans, my artists who perform have fans, people from all over the world watch. We had people watching in Korea and in Sweden and in Italy and in, you know, all over the world. And they had their best fundraising year ever. Wow. So the next year, we decided to do it the same way. And I'm thrilled to say that we're projected this year for the first time, and this will be 4 years now. We're projected to do the show here in New York and at Benjamin House. So what we'll probably do is I'm going to be taking a Christmas show to Brownville, Nebraska in December. We'll go there first, then go to Benjamin House. And then when we come back the following Tuesday, we'll live stream it from New York so that we can hit everybody. And I'm terribly excited to be live and in person again.
What does it take to produce a project like this?
A lot of blood, sweat, and tears. It's, you know, I don't have to raise the money to put the show together. Anne raises the money from donations in her town. And we try to be very mindful as we're using that money to produce the show that we don't waste any of it. We're very judicious about how we advertise, and our musical directors and everybody. All performers get an honorarium so that they are not just giving away their time. And basically, this year was the hardest one I've ever done. 2022 was the hardest because I was simultaneously appearing in The Sound of Music out at Paper Mill. So I was, if you travel from New York to Paper Mill, that's a long commute back and forth, plus the show. And a lot of the show days were 2 show days. So I was trying to do all of the work at my dressing station while I was waiting to make entrances or at intermission or between shows. And that's everything from writing all the intros to coordinating the rehearsal schedules to getting the studios booked so that the musicians could come, hiring the sidemen, making sure everything was ready on the day. And it came off as it always does. It came off without a hitch, but I was exhausted after.
I remember that period of time because you've been teaching as well.
Right.
I simply, I don't know how you manage all this together, but you are great at this. Definitely, you're great.
There are days when it's easier than other. I will not lie.
Oh, yeah. Great. And speaking about you as a vocalist, you sound like you're 30. Tell us how singers can keep their voices so young.
Well, I'm trained as a bel canto singer, and you know, if you know what bel canto is, you know that it just means pretty singing, pretty voice. When I started out, I was told I've always loved to sing, but I was told by people where I went to school that I would never be a singer, that I was a good actor, but not to try singing. But the problem is I wanted to sing, so I did what I think any person who really wants to sing did. I went hunting for a good teacher. And my teacher was a woman named Jan Ritchell out in Long Beach, California. Jan was bel canto trained, and she focused primarily, instead of focusing on, it's a classical technique, but it can be applied to any style of music. So she focused her work on musical theater. And I trained with Jan, well, regularly. I trained with her for about 2.5 years before I really started working a lot. And then even when I would be on the road or on tour or living in Las Vegas, I would come home every chance I got and take more lessons. So I was with her for 40 years, essentially. And somewhere along the way, Jan said, you know, I'm not going to be around forever, and I want to find some people who can teach my technique. So she brought me in and trained me, not just to do the technique, but to be able to communicate it, to teach it. And it's essentially, you know, bel canto is a rejuvenative therapeutic technique. So if you do it correctly, you are actually repairing damage to your vocal folds. So you are making your vocal folds younger all the time. And it is true. I actually think in many ways I sing better now that I'm in my 70s than I did when I was in my 20s and 30s, not because of any other reason, but that I'm a smarter singer now. I know I don't have to work as hard to accomplish what I want to accomplish. But I warm up daily. I exercise all the time. I'm fortunate that because I teach, I have to sing with my singers. So my voice is never out of use, even if I'm not in a show. And I try to speak as well as sing with the same technique so that I'm never tiring my vocal folds and never crunching or putting too much effort into stuff, so that there's no strain here on the instrument. And if the breath is in the right spot and you're using the vowels correctly, you can sing forever. You really can.
And as your student, I want to add to this that you helped me to repair my voice. When I first came to you in 2020, I had serious problems. And in 3 years, you changed my sound, my voice.
Your instrument is completely different now. And I won't say that your instrument was damaged before, but there were certain things that you were doing that were not helpful to a clear, bright, clean sound. And now you can do almost anything. You're a student of whom I'm very proud, because you've really grown.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I respect talent. You know, I like your acting, but I happen to be in love with your voice, and I'm glad that I get to work on it.
Thank you so much, Eric. And so you described your technique, and now may I ask, what should artists know about being your students?
Well, you know, I call myself the best kept secret. Most of my students come to me by referral. So a student of mine will tell someone else, you know, oh, if you want to repair this problem, or you want to fix that, or you want to know how to do this, call him. And I generally interview a student first, usually by Zoom now, to make sure that I'm a good fit. I make sure that the student likes me, that I like the student, that we'll work well together. If you don't know any of my students, you can go to my website, ericmichaelgillett.com, and there is a contact me page, and it will send an email directly to me. You can reach out to me on Facebook or on Instagram. People do all the time. The main thing is that what I look for in a student is something that needs to be worked on or improved, or the student has specific goals. I'm always looking for what the goals are. I have a new student who just started with me recently, and the thing that I met her years ago, and the thing I like about her is that she's got a child, and she's about to have another, and she wants that voice to stay intact, so that when the day comes that the children don't need her there constantly, when they're a little older, she can start to go back to singing, and she will not have lost what she had.
Yeah. So
it's very important to maintain it. It's very important to have a good exercise regimen. It's very important to learn to know how to breathe correctly, and then monitor your breathing, and then check in with your teacher periodically. So finding me is not that hard. I guess that's the bottom line. I do teach out of a studio called Piano over at 37 West 65th Street on the 4th floor. I had my own studio for many, many years, and then I'm glad I gave it up, because during the pandemic, it would have bankrupted me. So I now only go in and rent when I'm actually going to be teaching.
Yeah, great. So, and all those links to your website, and they'll be just posted later.
Awesome.
At the end of this video, absolutely, yes. And just repeat again, so for those who joined us. And so my next question for you is, you are honored by the American Songbook Association. I just want to mention their mission. It is to create transformational experiences for people of all ages by engaging in the music of the great American songbook. What would you say about collaborating with the association?
Well, first of all, some of the people running the American Songbook Association are some of my dearest friends and colleagues. Robin Westphal is on the board. Carolyn Montgomery is the executive director, I believe. So many wonderful people that are involved with it that I have known for years and respect. The way I came on their radar is that this past year, they created the Daryl Henline Award. They work in collaboration with Cabaret Scenes magazine, which is it's really the best cabaret magazine that's out there. It's a beautiful publication. And Daryl was the publisher, and he actually assigned a wonderful writer named Peter Levy to do the very first feature that was ever done on me in cabaret. And it was also, interestingly, Peter Levy's first actual interview. So I have known them for a long time. And when Daryl passed away, the program morphed, and then it joined forces with ASA. And they decided to honor Daryl with an annual award. And the award is the Daryl Henline Award. And I was the first recipient. So it's a kind of a lifetime achievement award for your work in this field. And I believe in what the American Songbook Association is doing, because their focus is on introducing these great songs and this material to generations that are too young to know them and are not necessarily interested. And so therefore, they're opening up an audience for this kind of music for another generation and a generation beyond that. They're very active in going and visiting senior homes and things like that. They're very active with schools. They've just had a big program in Chicago. They're being very aggressive about what they're doing. And Craig Pomerantz created an award for them that's a grant for 3 up-and-coming artists. So it gives them funding to help them with their next project. These are all things that nurture and help bring up another generation of not only music performers, but music lovers. And I couldn't respect what they do more if I tried.
Oh yeah, they're doing a great job, absolutely. Yes. And there is also a website available if people want to find out more about the association. Yes, so one of my favorite works you've done is Careless Rhapsody, The Heart of Lawrence Hart. I like the name, the title. And this album is posted on your website. So in the section recordings, right?
Yes.
And what was your inspiration for recording this album?
Well, I had already recorded, I'm on a lot of CDs, but I had recorded 2 solo discs before this, Sing a Rainbow, which was a top 10 family album with the LA Times back in its day. I recorded while I was with the circus, and I wanted it to be a legacy for my nephews and my nieces and that sort of thing. My second album was called Cast of Thousands, The Songs of Craig Carnelia, and it was based on a show that I developed that eventually became a theater piece that premiered at the Wyoming Theater Festival a few years back. And the principle behind it was that we are all the stars of our own movie, and yet we're also everybody else's extras. So the people that we pass by on the street, we're in their movie and they're in ours. And basically it was a sung through piece, 17 characters that I just had to morph into: men, women, young children, an old retired guy, a widow of 40 years. And that album to me was the last thing I ever really felt I needed to record. And then I had a couple of really negative things happen. I fell down a flight of stairs and was pretty banged up, had bad scars, and hurt my back very badly. I also, around that time, my apartment burned down. And in addition, that winter, it was a few months after my apartment burned down and I had had the fall, my agents at the time dropped me. And so I was pretty wounded. I was feeling pretty wounded. And I thought, I have to dig in and do something, but what could I do? And I was very attracted to Larry Hart's music. Lawrence Hart is one of the greatest writers of all time. And he was a man who he had such a heart to love with and never really found true happiness in love. And I thought, well, I understand that. And I decided I wanted to research and put together a project, but where to get the money? So I decided, I thought, who's going to put money into this? And I did a GoFundMe. And we funded the whole $25,000 in like 4 days. It was sort of amazing. I had an incredible team of players. Jonathan Cantor doubled on a lot of reeds. Dick Sarpolo was our bass player. Don Rebick was my arranger and musical director. And I think it's an absolutely gorgeous album. And my favorite thing about it is actually the artwork, believe it or not, because he was this huge romantic. And a lot of people don't know this, but he showed up at the premiere of the revival of Connecticut Yankee. And they say, the legend is, he was loaded, so he got kicked out of the theater, but it was a blizzard. And he was found later in the blizzard, taken to the hospital, ended up dying.
Oh my God.
And so the album cover features me in the last snowstorm of that year out in Central Park. And I'm carrying a dozen roses. And they're all red except for one, which is white. And the white rose stands for Larry Hart, that he was so full of love, but just different from everybody else. And there's great. Every one of the songs is a classic. They're just amazing. So I'm very proud of that album. You can get it through CD Baby, I think, in download form, and it's going back up on Amazon and Spotify. It's not there at the moment, but it will be going back up again. Mostly because of the pandemic, I dropped a lot of balls. But yeah, we're going to be putting it back up again. It's a lovely album. And thank you for liking it. It makes me very happy.
Eric, what advice would you give young performers?
I think the most important thing that you can do as a performer is persevere. You have to create. Nowadays, the world is changing so rapidly. You need to be knowledgeable about so many things. And I think it's all about keeping your heart in the game. Don't get cynical. Find a team that you can work with and that believes in you. Create content wherever you can. Look what you're doing with this. Because you don't know what the thing is going to be that hits for you. And, you know, don't take no for an answer. Just because you're not one person's cup of tea doesn't mean you're not somebody else's. It's a true story that Kelly O'Hara, who's had a fabulous career, is a very old friend of mine. And she was going to audition for Sweet Smell of Success, which ended up being her first Broadway lead. And Kelly went to the audition, and they didn't want to see her because it was their lunch hour. And she put her foot in the door and said, "You will see me." And the thing about the character that she was going to play with, she had to look soft and sweet and like a little dumpling, but she had to have a heart of steel like her brother. And I maintain that Kelly's talent got her the role, but if she had let them shut that door on her, who knows what her theater history might have been, you know? Just keep pushing. And I gave a piece of advice to somebody a long time ago, and I think it bears repeating. You don't have to keep batting your head up against doors that won't open. If you find that there's a casting director who just doesn't like you, they're probably not going to change their minds. They might. It's conceivable. In fact, I have a brief story about that. But I had a client once, and she kept saying, "I know they love me. They're always happy when they see me, but I just don't get called back." I said, "Why don't you take a month off and come back and only audition for people you haven't met yet?" And within about 2 weeks of coming back, she booked her first major job. And when she came back from that job about 5-6 months later, she went into one of the casting directors who hadn't been calling her back. And they said, "Where have you been? We haven't seen you." And she said, "Well, I just got back from this job." Well, nothing succeeds like having been working. So immediately they called her back for that show.
Wow.
So it's just being logical. There are a couple of casting people in town who, you know, they don't get me, so they don't get me. It's fine. That's fine with me. There was one casting director many years ago. I will leave him nameless, not because I can't say his name. He's one of my dearest friends, but because I don't think it's fair to say it. He saw me in an audition for, I think, Beauty and the Beast, and didn't care for what I did. And I came back to New York, and when they were auditioning Sweet Smell, I was already in a Broadway show. I was doing Kiss Me Kate, and my agents could not get me into the audition. He said to them, he says, "He can't act." And they said, "What do you mean he can't act? He's in a Broadway show." He says, "Well, he's not my cup of tea." All right. So I'm walking down 8th Avenue, and I'm passing the Pick-a-Bagel over around 50th Street. And here comes John Guare, who was the librettist for Sweet Smell, but who was also the librettist. He did the rewrites for Kiss Me Kate. And I talked to him about it, and I said, "You know, I really want to get in." And he says, "You should go in. You'd be a great Otis Elwell." So between him and Craig, I got an appointment. And the casting director didn't bring me in for the director. He brought me in for the assistant. And the next day he called my agents and he said, "I had a call back." And he said, "Who knew he could act?" But I tell that story. I tell that story because that casting director went on to become responsible for more offer-only work for me over the 7 or 8 years we worked together than every other office in the city combined. He would just pick up the phone and say, "You're the guy," you know.
This is a great achievement.
Yeah, and I think it's just like, I mean, listen, I really wanted that show, so I was willing to go back in again. But if you're willing to take no when they tell people no, and you don't look for other ways to get in the door, well, then somebody else is going to keep looking, and they're going to get it. So just keep trying. It's hard. It's not easy. Show business is not for sissies.
Tell me about it.
If you do it, you keep busy. I just saw you in that wonderful reading of A Trip to Bountiful, and with Letty Ferrer, and you know, you and she were perfectly matched and joined together. But you keep yourself getting out there, and a new group of people sees your work and hears about you, and you get fans. Like, I'm a fan. I'll go see your work when you're working.
Well, thank you so much for mentioning this. What can I do better as an actress? How can I make my acting better?
I think the only thing you could do to make your acting better is to just relax and believe that you're as good as you are. I think sometimes you don't really, I think, and this is probably a cultural difference, I think you want to be perfect. And I think sometimes perfection gets in the way of simplicity, and simplicity is where your best work is. The reason you were so good with Letty the other day is because you were grounded with an actor who's completely grounded herself. And so the two of you just bounced off of each other so nicely the whole time. And that's my favorite scene in that show anyway, but you guys just nailed it. You just nailed it. It was lovely.
Well, thank you so much. I really I felt honored that you came to see us and support.
I wouldn't have missed it. And I was thrilled to be there for Letty as well, you know.
Thank you, yes. Yeah, by the way, I had an interview with Lady Ferrer for upcoming 50th anniversary of Uta Hagen's book, Respect for Acting, a week ago. So it's going to be out like next week.
That's awesome. Good for you. Good for you. And good for keeping Letty in the public eye, because she's so wonderful.
She's wonderful. Yes.
She's probably my favorite person I ever met out at HB Studios, other than maybe Ed Morehouse, because I adored him.
Yeah, she's wonderful. And Eric, is anything else you like? Any stories, fun or sad stories you'd like to share with us?
I just think, you know, I've had a very different career path. I do think, you know, careers are more than just the sum of all the jobs you ever had. It's really making choices and saying, I was very fortunate. I went from my first big show, really big show, was a Las Vegas production show in the 70s. And it was there that I learned how to do 12 shows a week without losing my energy. Because it's 2 a night, every night. And one of them, there was 3 on Saturday nights. So you worked very hard, but it taught you discipline. And I loved that. I left that show and I came back again about a year and a half later in another show as the leading man. And that show taught me how to work opposite a star, because I worked opposite Suzanne Summers and Juliet Prowse and Debbie Reynolds and Charo, really that Charo. And it was great training to know how to hold my own on stage with somebody who was strong. Then from there, you know, I got offered the circus. I mean, I did some plays in the middle, but I got offered the ringmaster job, and I turned it down because I'd been in 2 long runs and I didn't want to do it. But somebody said to me, they said, you know, this is your Johnny Carson show, a story that you traveled with the circus. And I said, you know, you're right. And I took the job for 1 year and I stayed 11 and a half. So it tells you that what would my life have been if I hadn't done it, but how enriched is my life that I did do it. And also the best part of it was that in the circus, you know, they say that the theater is a family, but the theater is kind of, to me, really more of a small village where you sort of know everybody, but you don't see them all the time. But the circus is really a family. So you're traveling sometimes with 3 and 4 generations of one family on the show. Some of my closest friends in the world are still people I met during my circus years. And I can still walk on lots all over the world where there's a circus performing and people will know who I am and welcome me. And I'll meet the children of people for whom I sang at their weddings, things like that. It's a real joyous experience. So I guess the takeaway I would say, and then from there I went to New York and had my Broadway years and then went to the opera and stuff like that. But I asked myself, you know, you almost didn't take that job. You almost didn't take it. So there's something coming toward you, and, you know, have a little faith in it. I had an agent once who said, he says, if you don't get any place in this business, it's going to be because you have no zen. And I was very angry at the time, and I said, fine, I'll give Zen 6 months, not even realizing how stupid that sounded. But it was true. You need patience, you need perseverance, and you need to recognize opportunity when it passes you. And you also can't mourn things when they don't go your way. You have to move on to the next. A good piece of advice for anybody, and I think this is in any industry, is whatever it is to you, every time you do an audition, or every time you go up for something, or every time something doesn't work out, go get yourself a banana split. Even if a banana split to you is a Manhattan or a mani-pedi or what, or your nails done, you know, whatever you want, go do that for yourself and forget the other thing, because the next thing is already bearing down on you and you'll miss it if you're too busy worrying about what was behind you.
Yeah, it's like a little artist date with yourself.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Little, I do this.
And the other thing I think people should do that they don't do enough of is, like, every week, make a list of 3 or 4 people that you haven't spoken to in forever. They can be professional people that you should have maintained contact with, or it can be a friend you haven't seen in a while, or a colleague from another show. You don't have any agenda, just drop them a note. Drop a note and say, hi, it's been so long, I was thinking about you. Because in this business, we work very intensely for short periods of time, and then we drift apart so quickly. And so you want to hang on to some of these people. And the best way to do it is to just check in. Just remember to check in, because you don't know when checking in with someone is going to lead to something too.
Yes, I know. Sometimes, I mean, you don't hear from someone and you find out that the person passed away. That happened to me like last week. That one of the producers I worked with a few years ago and in his band, he passed away just recently, like a week ago. I mean, life is a spark, but
it's very true. It's very true. And we have no control over it. So carpe diem, seize the day.
Yes. Well, Eric, thank you so much for being with me today.
This was my pleasure. I'm so thrilled that you asked me to do it, and I can't wait to see the finished product. And you must put me in touch when Letty's piece comes up so I can see it.
Absolutely, yes.
Let's play a careless rhapsody, and let's set the music free.